Hello and welcome. This is AMECO English service and you're watching our daily updates live from the studio. I'm Gaila Damu. Stay with us. Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Affairs Minister AMECO held discussion with Annette Weber, European Union Special Envoy for the Horn of Africa, about the peace agreement and regional issues in his office. According to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Deputy Premier said on the occasion that the Ethiopian government worked hard to reach a peace agreement because of its desire to resolve the problem in the north peacefully. He also noted that the government is committed to the implementation of a peace deal. Humanitarian aid is being made available to the areas affected by the conflict, AMECO noted, adding that the work of provision of basic services is gaining momentum. He also called on partners to strengthen their cooperation in the face of implementation of the agreement and recovery of areas affected by the conflict. In addition, the Deputy Premier stated that the government will hold political consultations with the relevant parties to solve the security problems in some parts of the country, and discussions will be held on various agendas at the National Dialogue Forum. The EU Special Envoy Annette Weber, on her part, expressed her appreciation for the historic agreement. She also stated that the European Union will play its part in the implementation of the agreement and reconstruction. According to Ministry of Finance, Germany has extended support to productive social safety nets and conflict recovery to Ethiopia. Abebe Burhani reports.
A press release of the ministry stated that Minister of Finance Ahmed Shide has met with a German delegation led by Birgit Pickel, Director General for Africa of Germany's Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development. It was learned that the two sides had a productive discussion on the recent peace accord and the development partnership between the two countries. The Director General has welcomed the agreement and expressed her hope that it opened a path towards durable peace. Finance Minister Ahmed Shide, on his part, emphasized the government's full commitment to swiftly deliver implementation of the peace agreement and demonstrate tangible results on the ground. According to the statement, Germany is committed to increase its support to Ethiopia's productive safety net program for 30 million euros and contribute an additional 15 million euros to the World Bank's Response, Recovery and Resilience for Conflict-Affected Communities program to support the governments of Ethiopia. Both programs will be implemented together with the World Bank and other partners. The measures will be accompanied by technical cooperation to increase institutional capacity for local development, livelihood opportunities and human rights for a total of 8 million euros. Germany also announced its support for transitional aid measures provided through World Food Programme and UNICEF for 30 and 35 million euros respectively as part of Germany's response to the drought crisis and food price inflation in Ethiopia. It was indicated that the programs aim at improving life standards and coping capacities of drought-affected communities by building, restoring, improving and sustaining resilient systems and life-saving services. Both sides have also discussed the participation of the international community in possible future post-conflict and reconstruction efforts.
Let's begin with your reaction to the peace agreement.
A right move in the right direction.
What were the key points?
Day one, even for 1 minute, if we really saved a dying life, that is success. Disarming particularly irregular army, because in any country you expect monopoly of violence, as we call it in political science, is only to be held by a state, a government that's leading the country.
What kind of lesson could this agreement gives us as we move forward?
So the implication of disarming the rebel movement has huge implication for others who are, as we said, as we now speak, there are some irregular armies in the western part of Ethiopia, southern part of Ethiopia, and it also sends clear message that they too should be disarmed.
What are the pitfalls?
Particularly from the rebel side, those who are in diaspora, or almost disagreeing, or telling to the face, speaking, coming with some negative propaganda, because they are away from reality in here in Ethiopia. How people suffering, they don't understand it. People suffering, to be honest. When you start disarming, when you start DDRing, that is disarm, demobilize, and reintegrate the former fighting parties, what happens then? The technicality aspects. These could maybe raise some technical implementation, I don't even call it problems, but maybe some difficulties, but I'm sure the very principle is right, the very agreement on peace is right, then the implementation can also be successfully done. Implementing this peace accord, peace agreement is for good for all, not for only one side, to be honest. So if we really are thinking of prosperity of a nation, survival of a nation and the entire people, then I think we should believe in the philosophy of peace by peaceful means.
South Sudan's Ambassador James Morgan said South Sudan is pleased to welcome the recent peace deal reached between the government of Ethiopia and TPLF. Peace in Ethiopia is crucial to move forward and realize the process of regional integration, South Sudanese Ambassador to Ethiopia James Pitia Morgan said. And Nathaniel tells us more.
In an exclusive interview with Ethiopian news agency, South Sudan Ambassador James Morgan noted that South Sudan is pleased to welcome the recent peace deal reached between the government of Ethiopia and TPLF. It is to be recalled that the government and the TPLF have agreed to bring normalcy based on respect and upholding of the country's constitution, territorial integrity and sovereignty. The agreement was signed in Pretoria, South Africa, under the auspices of the African Union with principles of African solutions to African problems. The ambassador noted that South Sudan expressed its concern right after the beginning of the crisis in November 2020, stressing the peace agreement has far-reaching implications beyond Ethiopia. He explained that all of the neighboring countries of Ethiopia and African continent as a whole, there is nobody who was not really calling for peace because Ethiopia is a model.
When Ethiopia is not peaceful, all the region is affected. We don't feel comfortable about it. Because as I told you several times, that Ethiopia is a very bigger role to play in this region. The role of Ethiopia in this region is more important than the internal crisis that took place for the last 2 years. Because the region could not move forward in its regional integration process, which is the role that was supposed to be spearheaded by Ethiopia.
The peace talk was mediated by the former president of Nigeria, and that alone tells us it was an African solution to African problems, the ambassador noted. This is what we have been saying all the time, that African problems can find solutions within the context of the African, he said, lauding. I think that is very important, that the African Union is able to spearhead these peace talks and brought into conclusion. The ambassador condemned and welcomed some of Ethiopian friends beyond Africa who helped the peace talks to bear fruit.
We wanted peace in Ethiopia so that we move forward with the issue of the regional integration. The continent was also so concerned with the crisis in Ethiopia because we have Agenda 2063 ahead of us, and this agenda cannot be achieved unless this continent itself is peaceful. And that is why the African Union, the region, our region here is IGAD, or the Horn of Africa, and the continent as a whole, and the international community in general, for that matter. Everybody was really concerned.
He stressed that following this development, the ambassador expressed hope that a lot of support would come from friendly countries and the international community to support the people in government of Ethiopia in restoring basic services to people who are affected by the conflict.
Health Minister Dr. Lia Tadesse has called on the diaspora and donors to increase their support to the conflict-affected people in the Tigray, Amhara, and Afar regions. Modomliye has the details.
The minister made the remark at a handing over ceremony of medical equipment worth 30 million birr by the Human Bridge Ethiopia. Dr. Lia called on all diasporas to help rehabilitate the health facilities destroyed by the war in the regions. According to her, the ministry is working with regional health offices, international partners, as well as diaspora communities and local institutions to rebuild destroyed health facilities. She further noted that the peace agreement reached by the federal government and the TPLF has created a favorable environment for the reconstruction of health facilities. Human Bridge Ethiopia, a Swedish-based group, donated on the occasion 3 containers of medical equipment, including 210 intensive care unit beds, 20 wheelchairs, and 30 walking frames. A representative of Human Bridge Ethiopia, Dr. Adamu Anole, said the donation is worth 30 million birr and the group has been providing support for the past 1 year. Human Bridge Ethiopia will continue actively participating in the rehabilitation of the war-affected regions. Global Aid Ethiopia President Dr. Getachew Mazengia said on his part that a non-governmental organization covered the transportation fee for the containers donated by Human Bridge. According to him, since its foundation, Global Aid has donated several containers of medical equipment to health facilities in the war-affected areas. The president stated that Global Aid Ethiopia will strengthen its assistance.
Communities of Raya Bala Woreda, one of the conflict-affected areas in northern Ethiopia, have been receiving food supplies as part of the humanitarian assistance being delivered to the areas. Abebe Brahani has the story.
According to Ethiopian news agency, reporter who witnessed the distribution underway, over 5,000 victims in Raya Bala Woreda were receiving humanitarian assistance. Following the humanitarian aid distribution, the communities have expressed their happiness for being beneficiaries of the first Ethiopian government aid delivery. Raya Bala Woreda Agriculture Bureau head Tekka Tebeje said that about 6,800 quintals have reached the warehouse and were being distributed to war-affected and displaced persons in the Woreda. However, he stated the place was one of the major areas of the conflict, which resulted in tremendous human sufferings, damage to properties and infrastructural destruction. Accordingly, he called on domestic and international organizations that provide material support to extend their support. There is also lack of clean drinking water and clothes. We call on organizations that provide material support to extend their support. If these things are fulfilled, the society will go back to their agricultural activities, trade and other development activities that the society is accustomed to. Among the recipients of the assistance, Lemlem Ikwar Kiros said, I was displaced and stayed at the Jara refugee camp for about a year. You will be surprised to learn that we lost everything. We were beaten and left our home on foot. We had no food or drink here. Thanks God now, we came back to our hometown. The 50-year-old recipient, Hafte Wasihun, who returned from Jara refugee camp, thanked the government for its effort to assist the vulnerable population following the 2-year-long war in the area. We have now returned to our residential area in peace and we are getting humanitarian supplies. Now we are back to normalcy and we thank the government for this because we think now our freedom is respected. Moreover, Irwad indicated so many lorries with hundreds of humanitarian aid have been witnessed which are heading to the war-affected areas. The truck driver who transported the relief aid to the Worada, Wubishet Demesse, said there is an enabling environment to deliver humanitarian assistance effectively and on time. I came from Adam City. I drove for 2 days to reach here. We have now reached our destination and I have brought 400 quintals. I have observed that there is now an enabling environment to transport humanitarian aid for the needy. Following the signing of the peace agreement between the Ethiopian government and the TPLF, the government has opened both air and road transport to supply aid to Tigray, Amhara and Afar regions that have been affected by the war. Accordingly, the government of Ethiopia is working hard to expedite the delivery of humanitarian aid to conflict-affected areas in the northern part of the country. Government Communication Service State Minister Salamawit Kasa told journalists that after the peace agreement between the government and the TPLF, over 43,200 quintals of aid have been distributed to people in Raya Bala, Alamata and Koram.
Raya Lamat እና በኮረም ለሚገኙ ወገኖችም እንደዚሁ 43200 በላይ ኩንታል ስንዴ
more than 43,200 quintals of wheat and over 7,300 quintals of nutrition food were distributed to people in Raya Bala, Alamata and Koram. Some 287,000 people have benefited from this distribution. The work of delivering humanitarian service to those most urgently needy people will be strengthened in coordination with non-governmental organizations and partners.
የሰብአዊ ተቋማትን በማስተባበር ጭምር ተጠናክሮ የሚቀጥል ይሆናል።
You're watching AMECO English service, and now let's proceed to News Beyond Borders. Top African finance industry players to meet in Lome, Togo. The first edition of Africa Financial Industry Summit will take place in Lome, Togo on November 28 and 29. Organized by the UN Afrique, the event will bring together nearly 700 bankers and insurers, but also actors from fintech, capital markets, and microfinance to exchange ideas and propose solutions to advance the financing of African economies. It is above all a platform for public-private dialogue in favor of a sovereign Africa capable of financing its own infrastructure in major transformation projects, said Frederick Mori, the Managing Chief Operating Officer of UN Afrique. Among the solutions to boost the African finance industry, Mori proposes the injection of equity capital to help the development of African banks, but also the implementation of an adapted regulatory framework. While the African banking and insurance sector experienced sustained growth through 2019, the coronavirus pandemic and the war in Ukraine have affected the profitability of banks and sent interest rates soaring. Kenya's Priscilla Sitene, the world's oldest school pupil, has died peacefully at the age 100. Affectionately known by her nickname Gogo, Sitne's story has been a great inspiration for women in the world. Modomlie presents BBC report.
Okay? Yes. So I want you to revise.
Kenya's Priscilla Sitini, who was thought to be the world's oldest school pupil, has died peacefully at home at the age of 100. Gogo, which means grandmother in the local Kalenjin language, was what Sitini was affectionately known as by many. Her grandson Sami Chepsiwer told Kenya's The Standard newspaper she died peacefully in the presence of some family members. We are thankful for the 100 years of her life. She made all of us proud, he said. Sitini's story became the inspiration for the French film Gogo Priscilla, which led to a meeting with France's First Lady, Brigitte Macron. In a tribute on Twitter, one of the film's co-writers said Sitini's message on girls' education remains. Sitini began attending Vision Preparatory School with her great-great-grandchildren after she decided at age 90 to return to primary education, having worked for several decades as a traditional midwife. 2 years ago, Africa News reported on her educational journey.
The most subjects she likes in class is science, Christian religious education, and mathematics. She's very, very keenly attentive, and she also has good handwriting.
My grandmother is a true testimony that education has no limits, in such a way that she's made me to further my education, and I'm so happy for her. She's really an icon, a motivational icon and a role model.
Gogo is a very good competitor. For me, I'm usually top of the class. When we did a zonal exam, she beat me and became at the top of the class.
She wasn't able to attend school as a child, but when the Kenyan government began subsidizing primary school fees in 2003, it allowed her and other senior citizens another chance. Gogo had a big dream of becoming a doctor, but for this.
I used to work as a traditional midwife, where I would help women undergoing birth complications, which arose. But I am now studying to become a doctor. I don't think education has an age limit.
She told the BBC back in 2015 that she wanted to inspire older children who were not attending school to go back, saying, "They tell me they are too old, and I tell them, well, I am at school, so should you." Gogo is a great role model for many that education has no age limit.
That's all the news we have for today. I'm Gaila Damu. Thanks for watching and stay tuned with the rest of our programs.